The other day I made a video going into why it's important to understand information as opposed to just memorizing it. And I gave a very simple example, which was 4 times 6. You can remember that the answer is 24, but it's also important to understand why, what 4 times 6 actually means, that you can draw a 4 by 6 rectangle and that makes 24 dots. And anyway, I'm sure a lot of people figured out how to extrapolate beyond the simple math, but for some people there was some confusion. They got stuck on that example and were unable to extrapolate beyond that, or maybe they just didn't feel like it. Whatever. Anyway, I'm going to now elaborate a little bit upon this in some real life examples. So, say you're at home and you're like, I want some shoes. So you go to the store, you see some shoes and you're like, wow, this is a spectacular price. How do they make them for so cheap? That's great. You give them some money, you get some shoes, you put them on, you got shoes. Yay, everything is great. But the thing is, if you start looking into the information and what's going on, other than just the very top surface, you may come to realize that there's some kid somewhere who a year ago was frolicking in the fields and learning to hunt and learning to cultivate the earth to grow plants and learning all this important stuff about life and having relationships, doing all this amazing stuff. And that was a year ago. And his life was like that until the shoe factory showed up. And now he spends 16 hours a day making shoes. And then, after his 16-hour shift, he eats a bowl of rice, goes to sleep right there in the factory, wakes up the next day, and starts making more shoes for like 10 cents an hour. And you just paid for that kid to be enslaved in that horrible thing. Ah! So maybe you didn't just buy shoes, maybe you did some horrible thing. Anyway, so maybe you want to feel better about yourself because, once you start thinking about things, you realize that a lot of the obvious things to do in life turn out to be kind of bad. So you decide, well, I'm gonna donate some money to charity. That'll make me feel better. So you go to some charity and say, here's a bunch of money. And the charity guy says, wow, thanks, this is really gonna help a lot of people. You should feel very good about yourself. Ah, way to go. So, ignoring the fact that, 90% of this money just goes right into that guy's pocket, or, kind of through a few hoops so it doesn't look like it went right into that guy's pocket because, the yacht he bought was a business expense that he needed to transport his self from here to there for business or whatever. So the guy finally gets to a part of the world where they don't really have money. I mean, there's money around, but people don't really use it much. They're just taking care of themselves. And he goes in there with the money and says, hey, farmer man, I see you working really hard here. And the farmer man's like, yeah, well, right now I'm just planting this new crop that's going to be ready in a year. And we're just harvesting this one over there. And in 3 months, we're going to get that one over there. We got all this stuff going. And charity man says, oh, you don't have to do all that, man. That sounds real complicated. You need to plan ahead like a year. That's a lot of stuff to deal with. I mean, it's got to be a heavy thing. And the farmer man's like, well, yeah, it is pretty stressful. It's difficult, but, it's good work. And the charity guy says, here's $50. Take one of those dollars, go over to this guy over here. He'll give you money for your dollar. You don't have to do all this other stuff. Don't worry about it. And farmer man is like, he's never had this experience before. It's just out of the blue. He's like, what? I can just take one of these papers, go over here and get food? I don't even have to do all this other stuff? That's incredible. Thanks, man. And charity man says, no problem. And he gets out of there while everyone's still smiling. Problem is, 3 weeks later, the guy's out of dollar bills. And he's like, oh, can I still get some food? And the guy's like, whoa, no, you need one of those dollar bills to get the food. You can't have any more food. And the guy's like, oh no, I've been doing this, and I was supposed to plant my crop 3 weeks ago, and I haven't. I'm gonna starve. I have nothing. Ah! So at that point, you know, the guy, maybe he should have thought about it more before, but he didn't. And now he's in the position where he can either start stealing, or he can starve to death, or, oh wait, there's the new shoe factory that opened right down the street. The shoe factory that invited the missionary guy to come by and help all the nice people. So this happens to be a moral, upstanding guy, and he's like, well, I'm not turning to a life of crime. I guess my only choice is either starve or work for the shoe factory. This sucks. So what happened there is you basically paid for that guy's teaser. You know when the drug dealer comes along and starts handing out free samples to get everyone hooked? That's what you just paid for. You just paid for that guy's. They didn't even have to do it themselves. You paid for it with your helpful charity. And now that guy's working in the shoe factory for you. All because you didn't care. Didn't care enough to look below the surface and think about what you're doing. Not just you, and not necessarily you. Maybe you are one of the people who cares. And if you are, thank you so much. But a lot of people just don't care. They don't think about it. They're just like, oh, shoes, they're super cheap. Yay, I got my luxuries, and who cares about whatever else is going below the surface? And then people say things to me like, Jaimie, you're just ruining it. Why don't you just stop? Well, you know what? If the truth is ruining it, then it needs to be ruined. Anything that the truth ruins should be ruined.